review what we learned. Review what we learned. Number one, what did we say?
The Bible is a book of Revelation.
The record of Revelation. The Bible is the record of Revelation. And how was it written? What's the process by which the Bible is written? We have another word. An inspiration. And we said written by
Thank you.
an inspiration, which is another process.
Thank you.
We say perfect inspiration happens when? How do you know that this is actually what exactly was written? Or when the books leave the hand of the writer, the original writer, when it was written. So here is a question, inspiration. So go with that. Go with me.
For everyone to settle.
I'm waiting. I'm just trying to put the words so we can review it. Number 2. Before Babylonian exile, the language of Israel was Hebrew. We know this, and we remember how we read from Isaiah and from the book of Kings that the Sennacherib army was talking to the people in Hebrew, but the official said, "Speak to us in Aramaic." We understand it, and they refused. So Hebrew, and the Bible was written in Hebrew. One more time. In the time of Ezra, when they came back, right? In the time of Ezra, Ezra was a priest and a scribe, one of the people who wrote the copies of the Bible. In the time of Ezra, after the return, and few facts. The language of the Israelites was, the common language of Israel was Aramaic. The common language was Aramaic. Not too many people spoke Hebrew. Aramaic. I forgot how is it? You or I? Aramaic. What else? It's Ezra who started the synagogues. Listen, this is important too. Before the exile, there was a center sanctuary, the tabernacle, and the temple in Jerusalem. And after that, they didn't have the synagogues. 3 times a year, everybody go to the temple to celebrate the feast. When they came back from the exile, Ezra started what we know now as the beginning, the start of the synagogue. What's the synagogue? If you talk about it like this, the synagogue is a Protestant church. The temple is an Orthodox church. The synagogue is why? Because 3 times they have to go to the temple. Every Sabbath they have to do the synagogue, which is
Just a gathering place.
they have the Torah and the prophets. They have the scrolls. They have the scrolls, and they read them. This is how you find them in the synagogue. They are kept in a very important place in the eastern wall of the synagogue, and they read them. They have the scrolls, which is Torah and the prophets, and then also the
sacrifice.
There is no sacrifice in the synagogue. They read the Bible, they sing psalms, and they listen to a sermon by the rabbi. 3 things: Psalms, reading Bible, and a sermon.
Protestant church, yeah.
Yeah, what I say, or a meeting, because they're forbidden to make into many altars. Only one altar.
Yeah.
That's what start the synagogues. Here, what we notice that the scrolls that was written by hand in the synagogues were all uniform, or it is different. It is different. We discovered that the synagogues, each synagogue, so there is, we call it discrepancy. Discrepancies in the synagogue copy. Is this clear? Because it's written by hand, some pieces were missing, some pieces were written in a different way, but we know that every synagogue has their own copy, and their own copy is not exactly like the other synagogue. We know this from even the time. Come 3, that's when. When did they come back?
No major differences, Yamoni. I mean, there could be.
That's what we're gonna come to.
Okay.
Yes. We're talking Babylonian exile is it's 580, and the return is, when is the return? Actually, this is, let's say 600, and this is 550. To make it simple. Now, for 300 years BC, you got the Septuagint. What is a Septuagint? Many Jews did not come back to Israel, and their language now is
Hebrew.
Their language is Greek. And their scholars wanted to unify the Bible to standardize. The first attempt to standardize the scriptures. This is the first attempt to standardize it, 300 BC, right? So they have 70 different manuscripts, they put them together and they gather the most consistent information, the most consistent pieces. Listen to me, this is all about Old Testament. I did say nothing about the New Testament. We're talking about the story of the Old Testament, okay? So this is the first time when the Septuagint came out, everybody was excited about it. They took it and then actually translated it to Aramaic as well. And then it's used.
Septuagint, was it Greek or Hebrew?
Greek.
Greek?
Septuagint by definition is Greek, it's not Hebrew.
Okay.
The scholars, the 70 scholars, took Hebrew manuscripts from Babylon, where they were exiled from Israel, and they looked at them and they compared them. And they said, whatever was agreeable, this is tradition, nobody really have a document that says it. If there are 50 of them agreeable, they would take that whatever the 50 is saying.
Okay.
You see here the struggle of the community, of the people of God, to conserve what is authentic. They don't want to have any kind of nonsense, right? So when the Septuagint took it, they are going to do something very brave. They're going to say, we're going to take only the consistent pieces. We're not going to take anything that is redundant or different. We're going to keep it out. Okay? So they end up with this copy that is first, all the way to 1st century Judea. So all the synagogues, including where Jesus is actually learned and in Galilee, they're all actually using the Septuagint. This is not really something very strange, because what you see on all the New Testament quotes of the Old Testament, كل المراجع بتاعة العهد الجديد اللي متاخدة من العهد القديم كلها جاية منين؟ من السبتجنت. All right. So the church actually, this becomes the book of the church. The Septuagint is the book of the church. Our liturgical, from the 1st century, liturgical work is all based on the Septuagint.
The scribe did not speak Greek.
No, but they had it in Aramaic.
Okay, so he
They-
was
they-
different
they
than
took-
Hebrew.
So people were excited about this in the synagogues, but when they came back and said, okay, they have this copy that actually we can standardize, so everybody was learning the Septuagint
Yeah.
in Aramaic. Now, we move forward. After the church is made, number 5, the Jews in general, the Jewish sages, hated the conversion of their own country people. They didn't want any Jews to convert to Christianity. So they, I'm gonna have to, can you look it up? The Latin word for going to the origin. Just say, what was the movement in the movement of going back to the origin? Something, add something. So they said, let us do our own, or make our own Hebrew standardization.
Zionist movement?
No, just call it movement going to the origin. It's called going to the origin. Going back to the origin. So they started thinking about doing their own standardized version. Huh? It's called P-O,
Fontes.
oh, Fontes. Ad Fontes, right? What is this? This is a Latin term for going back to the origin. We don't want anybody to explain to us anything. Ad Fontes is a movement happened during the Enlightenment. They didn't know church to explain to them what the Bible is saying, and this is what the Protestant picked up. But they did the same. We're not going to take the Septuagint, because now it's the book of the church. Let the Christians have it. We're going to have our own, go back to the Hebrew. So they collected whatever resources they have, but this time did not compare them together and kept out. They actually included everything. So you find two verses that are not exactly the same. You try to have a way to put them together and not to omit any of them. So you ended up having which one bigger? This version that they're trying to do, or the Septuagint? Which one is going to be bigger? If you're following me.
Then the new version. Because
The new version, because they're not omitting anything. So they call that number 6. They started working on it 6th century, 600s AD. They collected them and they started using what we call the Mazura. 600 AD to the first millennium. This is it. They used the Mazura, and the scribes they used it. They were called the Masoretic. And the Mazuras are a very elaborated system of keeping things under surveillance. Like nobody
that's Old
can.
Testament only, right?
Old Testament again. We're not talking New Testament here. Just please understand. We're not talking about New Testament. New Testament was written all in Greek, translated to different languages. We didn't go through this. This is much ancient, difficult one to follow. So the Masoretic scribes, they called the Masoretic version, were finished 1000 AD, 1000 after Christ. Okay. Now I did an example last time of reading the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 17, about the story of Goliath, David and Goliath. And how in the Masoretic is 55 verses. And the Septuagint it is 35 verses. There's 20 verses difference. Some people might say this is shocking, but if you understand, listen to me. When we are talking about the differences and we're talking about how the Bible went through this, don't be shaken. Okay? There is no contradiction in the writing. There is no contradiction. It might be addition. It might be adding a little bit I mean, there's not even details. Like repetition. It's repetition of things. So, and it is concrete form. There's nothing missing from the Bible. And it's concrete form. Nothing missing. Nothing added. Nothing strange. We're talking here about words that actually can be more or less. But the core of the story, the core of the teaching is the same. We should not think of the Bible as a literal handing down from one generation to another. It's not that. Not one letter at a time. But whatever spirit that is actually given to God, by God to humans, that's why St. Paul says, not the letter, but the spirit. He keeps saying that. If you're stuck on the letter, you're going to have a big problem. We're not stuck on the letter. We know that when the book was inspired, it was perfect. But once it started to be copied and move on, God preserved certain things that He wants to give us. So when you look at the differences, and I give this example, let's do it again this time. The example of, can we do this? Let's go and read, can we put the Septuagint here, and we put the Hebrew here, and make the comparison. Can we see it? So we'll go to,
Yeah, that's fine. Are you from it?
it's a famous story that I want to show and share with you. So we get this done. I want you to understand the differences. That's why in the Holy Week, I think the church, we should use the Septuagint, the original church document for the Holy Week. Yeah, I'll go back again one more time. What is very firm and strong? The Bible or the church? The church. Because the church is the one who holds the Bible. This is extremely important for you to understand. If the church doesn't say the Bible is the book of God, then who's going to say it? No one is going to know it. So the St. Paul in Timothy, talking to Timothy, he says, the church is the foundation and pillar of truth. The church is the foundation and pillar of truth. Whatever the church has kept for us, we believe. So I just want us to kind of understand this is important, because if you're going to start playing with the Bible a lot like that, and you see there's a lot of things that happen, yes, very, very big effort, but how are you going to hold this true? How are you going to hold it true? How are you going to say this is actually true? Unless the church says it is true, and the church uses it in liturgical worship. Let us go and make this comparison. Sure. Okay, that's fine. So again, that's why I would say, be careful that when we hear general, loud Christian teaching about the Bible, the Word of God, we do the same. We do hold the Word of God very high, and it is actually living. But we don't think of it as the foundation. It is actually the light that's carried on a pillar. The Word of God is a light that's carried on a pillar. What's the pillar that carries the light? What's the foundation? Is the church herself. The church as the living being that God wanted to do by His covenants, by the revelation. Remember, we started talking about Revelation, and Revelation said it's about God coming out of secrecy and revealing Himself to human to make a relationship, a covenant. And that covenant is living. It's not really dead. And out of the covenant comes the Bible, the sacraments, and all the churches. The church's life. I just wanted to make sure that we get what is the differences between the Septuagint, which is from 300 BC, and the Masoretic from the 6th century to the 1000. Now, let's read. We'll read one side, and somebody reads the other side. We'll read it by reading it silently. I'll read for you from the. You will keep your eyes on the big screen. I'll read from the small screen. Now the Philistines gathered their armies together to battle, and were gathered at Sukkot, which belongs to Judah. They encamped between Sukkot and Azekah, and Ephes Damim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and they encamped in the valley of Elah, and drew up in battle array against the Philistines. The Philistines stood on a mountain on one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side with a valley between them. Anything in this? Is it the same?
The names are different.
Huh?
The names are different.
Okay. Sakut, instead of Sakut, and Azekah, the same. Ephraim, Azekah, Ephraim means F is the mean. Okay. And the champion went out from the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. And he had bronze armor on his legs, and a bronze javelin between his shoulders. Now the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his iron spearhead weighed 600 shekels, and a shield bearer went before him. Then he stood and cried out to the armies of Israel, and said to them, "Why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and you, the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." And the Philistines said, "I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man, that we may fight together." He's telling them, "You don't have men." When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistines, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem. Does that start?
And David, 32.
32. And David said to Saul, okay, listen, how come we jump from 11 to 32?
هم جنب هنا هم جنب مش احنا.
Okay, I think they're numbering it. I think maybe it's numbered according to the Masoretic.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
So that's actually, let's go back down and see if the Masoretic has it as 32.
بس بس في minor differences يا بونا، يعني هنا it says 4 cubits, the other one said 6 cubits.
I know. There'll be some of that too. Now 30.
I'm trying to get
I'm not sure why they are doing the numbering this way. Okay, let me continue. For the son of Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and who had 8 sons, and the man was old, advanced in years in the days of Saul. The three oldest sons of Jesse had gone to follow Saul to the battle. By the way, he's introducing David here as if he is not known.
Okay.
But what happened in chapter 16? Listen, this is Masoretic, right? Chapter 16. Okay? And this is a little bit weird. You're going to be a little bit weirded by this when you read it. Now the Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him?" This is the chapter before. "Fill your horn with oil and go. I'm sending you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided myself and king among his sons." So why is he talking about David as if he appearing in the story for the first time? Right?
It's unknown by Saul. It's unknown by Saul and the Israelites in general still.
But it doesn't seem like he's talking about Saul here. He's talking about the reader. What's that now? Okay. Here, see, take the heifer with you, so etc. But then he goes to the sons. Now, so he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy with bright eyes and good looking, and the Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is the one." He's giving you even description, more details about David in chapter 16. And all of a sudden, in chapter 17, as if we have never heard about David before, they bring in David for the first, as if it's first time you hear about him, right? This is few paragraphs before. Hey, look at this. This is 17. Now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and who had 8 sons. And the man was old, advanced in years, in the days of Saul. The 3 oldest sons of Jesse had gone to follow Saul to the names of his 3 sons were. You understand, like it's telling us the story again. But David occasionally went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. David was the youngest, you know that. Then Jesse said to his son David, think now for your. So he's saying the story from before even David come. See, David rose early in the morning, left the sheep with the keeper, and took the things, and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the camp as the army was going out to the fight and shouting for the battle, for Israel and the Philistines had drawn up in battle array army. So this is all for the Septuagint is redundant. It's too much already, we know about it from chapter 16. Now, you notice here that the problem is the Septuagint is main concern with the story. The Masoretic is concerned with not details, it's actually with reconciling the versions. Making sure that everything written is going to be in the book. You understand? Does that take away from the story? No. Does it change anything? No. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You will not find that these details in the Septuagint. When you go on, so where we get at back to.
We got it from the Orthodox Study Bible now.
Now, okay.
Yes.
So where are we?
But David?
When Saul and all Israel heard these words, but David said to Saul, this is it. And this is gonna be, I think this is where he got it. 30.
32.
And David said to Saul, and Saul said to David here, 32.
32.
32. Then David said to Saul, this is exactly, so the numbering of the other one was the
matching
the Masoretic, so that you can be oriented. So all the way from what, 11
to
71 is not found in the Septuagint. But to me, when you look at it, it's actually already said somehow in the chapter before. You got the story about David and who he belonged to. This is one of the examples. I'm just trying to say, when you come to the end of it, how many verses in the Septuagint? The Masoretic have, what's the number of verses here?
33.
This is 58. Because of this big chunk of story that was not found. So this is where we have differences. This is where we have differences. Sometimes, and many times I see the Septuagint makes much more sense than the Masoretic. But then sometimes the Masoretic have insight into the verses than the Septuagint. You can have it both ways. And when I read in the Holy Week, when we read, I keep the book of the reading, that big book we have is actually a Septuagint. So if you follow what the people are saying and you're reading your own, you will get much more deeper into the verses than if you read one of them. Try that. When I was working on this book, the big book that we have on the Bengalia, that actually we have a PDF of it and I sent it for people to put it, I found some verses doesn't make any sense at all. Things that doesn't make sense, but just because the Masoretic trying to cram things together, just put it together.
Yes.
Yeah, so I go to the Septuagint, I find the meaning very clear. You don't need to have too many verses to do it. And sometimes the opposite. I find the Septuagint actually, the words are used are very strange. It's not really matching the meaning. Then I go to the Masoretic and I find the meaning. So this is something for us to be aware of. But there is no contradiction. There is no conflict. That's why we have to be aware of this as we study. Right? Anybody has a question about this?
You might already said, but I have a question. New King James is following what exactly?
We're coming to that. Okay. I need to get to the document that we have. Do we have the document? Can you put it on? Document? Yes. We're coming to it. So at least we got up until here, right? It's the records of Revelation written by inspiration, which is another divine grace for writing the Bible. It's the same as Revelation, but it's a different process. And we said Is all the Bible authorized? All the verses of the Bible authorized? And the word authorship means it's the words of God. No. Some words are not from God. Some words are from Satan. Throw yourself down. Is that authorized? No. But is it inspired? Yes. God wanted it to be written so we can actually know it. But it's not authorized by the temptation in the garden. Peter words. God forbid that you be crucified. And then what Jesus answer says. So you have revelation, inspiration, authorization. Right? We talked about that. Okay?
Are we still doing chapter 2?
What is in chapter 2?
Revelation, inspiration, elimination.
Let's go to the next one, chapter 3.
I only have chapter 2.
I don't have chapter 3.
72 only.
Okay.
I only have chapter 2.
I didn't see the whole book.
No.
Okay.
Maybe it does have at the end.
No.
No, it's still in chapter 2.
Yeah. Continue. Oh, the Dead Sea Scrolls. We want to do this. Can you broadcast that?
Sure.
Yeah. What did we talked about the Dead Sea Scrolls? The Dead Sea Scrolls. They are the story about finding the books in the desert of the Jordan. Go down. Yeah. So in different denominations, in different church places, they have different books. For example, the Catholic, the Orthodox, but Protestant don't have are what we call the additional books, which is Tobit, Judas, Sirach, Baruch, 1st, 2nd Maccabees, Wisdom of Solomon, Letter of Jeremiah, Daniel, the story of Susanna and the one of light, the Song of the Three Men, which is the third host, the story of Bill and Dragon, in addition to Esther. This is not found in the common core that every church has. But the Septuagint have them. Why we have them? Why we have these books? Because that's what the Septuagint have. Good. Included by Orthodox in the Synod of Jerusalem, it's first Esdras, the first book of Ezra. Ezra has 3 books. We only have one from them. Actually 2. Nehemiah the second. Maccabees, there is a third Maccabees in the Greek Orthodox, you're going to find in the Orthodox Study Bible. The prayer of Manasseh, which is not part of the one that in New King James you find in the Septuagint too, and Psalm 151. Russian and Ethiopian have the second Esdras after Nehemiah. What else is?
Prayer of Manasseh,
We do,
Bible?
yes, in the Septuagint. Ethiopian church has even more. They have something called the Book of Jubilees, the prophecy of Enoch, the third Maccabean, and Baruch has another one too, another fourth Baruch.
How come we consider even the Ethiopian church like a sister church to the Coptic church? They have like even.
It doesn't bother us, they have more books. It does not bother us. And then this is one of the toughest questions I find in the. Here's what is canonization? So up. Canonization. Oh, wait, okay. More. This is the Hebrew. So when the Hebrew look at their Bible, that's their canon. 5 books of the Torah. There is 8 books of the Nevi'im, the prophets, and there is 11, I think, 3 and 3 and 5, 11 books of the Ketuvim. And they divide them in 1 group in the first Torah, 2 groups in the second, 3 groups in the third. This part here, this middle part, is called the 5 rolls or Megillot. This is liturgical. They read the Song of Songs and Passover. They read the Book of Ruth in Pentecost. They read Lamentations on Yom Kippur. They read Esther actually in Pentecost. And Ecclesiastes on Rosh Hashanah. Okay. Notice here Daniel is not actually part of the prophets. Daniel is historical books. Their books. Chronicles is not part. It's actually one of the books. Cases. And why they say? They say Samuel and Kings were written by prophets. These are not prophets. Although Jesus said something different. The Septuagint has a different way of looking at this. This is all Masoretic work. Next. You got that?
Down or up even?
Down. No, yes. The three divisions of the Torah, the three divisions of the Tanakh, TNK, is Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim. The three groups. Next. Torah is the first part of tripartite three-part canon, followed by Nevi'im, prophets, and Ketuvim. Nevi'im is composed of Joshua, Judges, Samuel, Kings. They're all historical former prophets and later prophets. Ketuvim is composed of 11 books, which by contrast appear in a wide variety of orders. Next. Okay. Saint Athanasius canon. This is something for us, like our church. There are then of the Old Testament. He writes this in one of his Paschal letters. When he every feast he sends a letter, like the Pope sends us a video. In the time he used to send a letter to the churches, and he speaks in that one of those letters of the Pascha of resurrection. He spoke about the canon of the Bible. There are then of the Old Testament 22 books in number. He doesn't have what we have. Very interesting. St. Athanasius actually goes back like almost like the Masoretic. For as I have heard, it is handed down that this is the number of the letters among the Hebrews, their respective order and names being as follows. The first is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Everybody agree with that? The 5 books of Moses are standard. Everybody has them. Joshua, son of Nun, Judges, Ruth, and again after these 4 books of Kings. Instead of 1 Samuel, it's 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 3 Kings, 4 Kings, which is 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings in our copy. The first and second being reckoned as one book. He doesn't consider, so he's 22 because the first and the second Samuel is one book. We call it the first king. And the second and the third is one book and considered second king. And again, the first and the second of the Chronicles are reckoned as one book. Again, Ezra, the first and the second are similarly one book. That's Ezra and Nehemiah. After this, there's the book of Psalms, then the Proverbs, next Ecclesiastes, and the Songs of Songs. Job follows, then the prophets, the 12 being reckoned as one book. The 12 prophets, minor prophets, are all one. So there's one. But then I have to write this note down, although Daniel is not part of the prophets in the Masoretic, Jesus called it Daniel the prophet. Okay. Isaiah one book, Jeremiah with Baruch, Lamentations and the vessel of one book. Afterwards, Ezekiel and Daniel, each one book. Thus, far constitutes the Old Testament. Since canon is similar to the Hebrew Tanakh canon, he began by stating the book number as 22, while the Tanakh has 24. The difference is that in St. Athanasius not counting Esther and counting Lamentation with Jeremiah. He also added Baruch, the vessel of Jeremiah to Jeremiah. They consider many books as one, that they bring the number to 22. Okay, so the Torah, by the way, Samaritan Bible is only that. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. They hated the prophets. They didn't want the prophets. The prophets were against Samaritan, so they didn't want to include them. The Tanakh is the new way the Masoretic called the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, because of Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, and this is the books listed there. And then we talked about the Catholics and the Orthodox, but not in the Protestant. They added, they took out the Septuagint books that we don't have. I want to get into the translations of the English.
Malish, I still didn't understand, maybe I missed something or non-canonical, why do we call it non-canonical?
It's not supposed to be called that.
Ah.
It's not. They are called by the Protestant non-canonical because they don't want the Septuagint. But in the Septuagint it is canonical. That's the canon of the Septuagint.
So why did the Jewish people take these books out of their
Because the Septuagint to them is not as good, so they have to go back and limit the number of books to make sure that we don't mix with the church whatsoever. There is some things, for example, between you and me, I really don't know about the book of Judith. Book of Genesis to me is a very weird book. Maybe in the Septuagint they included it as like a folklore or something, but it's not really some book that I see the church use it at all. We don't use it. The book of Judas is never used. Story. We use the book of Tobit, and Tobit is used on the Friday of the blind man.
Yes.
We use the Maccabees. We have the Synaxarium actually about the martyrs of the Maccabees, the second Maccabees. We use the prayer of Manasseh. We use Susanna and Daniel. All these things we use. Judas, to me, is like, what is this? That's my only concern with the Septuagint. So that might be this book is added at some time to the Septuagint, but it's not used by the church. Let's go to the canon. What's canon?
Do you want to follow me chapter 2?
3, yes.
Take time. Do you want to follow me too?
Yeah.
Can
I have the phone with me.
okay. طيب خلاص.
I'm just going to say what canon is. What's canon? Canon in the Greek word is a measuring stick. Mastara. They put the books under certain rules. You have to, the books, it's a measuring way of measuring books if they come up to certain standards. It's from the Greek grammarians in Alexandria. لما كانوا المدرسين بتوع مدرسة الإسكندرية أو الناس الفلاسفة الكبار عايزين يعلموا عيالهم, when they want to teach their kids, they instructed them. Listen, this is extremely important for us too. They instructed them for a list of books. Which one would be in the canon, the Greek canon? The Iliad, Homer work. This would be the standard by which you measure all the books. For example, if they come up to this sophistication and language, they become included in the canon. The canon is the curriculum of reading. We get it? يعني زي الكوريكولم بتاع المدرسة. الحاجات اللي موجودة في الكوريكولم ده الكانون. ده القانون بتاعنا اللي هنقراه. أي حاجة ما تبقاش على المستوى ده، يعني مثلا هنقرا ميكو سمير. أقدر أحط ده في الكانون في الكوريكولم؟ No. Comic books. Can I include comic books in the reading of kids? So the canon has to be certain books that come up to the standard. The church adopted the word and said, which book will have in the library of God's revelation? Which ones? They said Genesis for sure, Exodus, and they listed them. So then over time, we don't know how people included it. We really don't know who and how this became. It's one of the hardest things to study. Why a book like Esther was kept in the Bible? Why a book like Judas was kept in the Bible? Why a book like the Gospel of what is the word? Barnabas.
Yeah.
Why was not included in the Bible? And who excluded it? This study is very difficult, but it seems like the church had its own engine. Somehow, sometime, the churches all agreed somehow that these are the list of books that should be read as the Bible. You get that? So that's what canon is. Canon is the original word is a measuring stick that measures which book should be included, which books should not be included. You got that? That's canon. Now we come to translation. And I'm going to do this. What time is it now?
55.
5 minutes?
Yeah.
All right. Translations. English translation. We're talking about English. In English translations, people in translation. First, you start with this. Translation with this rule. Translation is interpretation. What do I mean by that? You have a word, and under the word there is like 10 meanings. You're not going to be able to put all of them, right? But you pick one. By picking one, you're interpreting the word. You pick the interpretation of it. You have any ideas? Like, give me an example between Arabic and English.
between Arabic and English?
Yeah, so sometimes it's very difficult to translate some words. You know the joke they say,
Yeah.
don't cut my bread. Don't cut my bread. When the person works with someone who says, don't cut my bread, what do they mean?
That's right.
What do they mean? Do they mean that they're literally holding a knife and he has a loaf of bread and you're asking to keep the loaf intact? Or it means don't fire me? So when you go in translation, you can go in two ways. You're gonna have to keep those in mind. Form and to function. What do I mean by form? Literal. What do by function? Meaning. So when you do literal, you might actually miss that meaning. If I say don't cut my bread means ما تقطعش الرغيف بتاعي. If it's literal, it's form. But if I say don't fire me, you're going away completely from the literal, but you're giving me the. So sometimes you need both, right? You need both. There's something about the literal that you need. There's something about the form, the meaning you need. You need both. There is no way in translation you can get both. You're always leaning one way or another. There is no way. Unless you learn the original language in its really original way of understanding it. And even if you say this to some Egyptians who grew up here, they know the words, but they don't know what does the meaning of it, right? It has some ticklish, it tickles you when you hear it, right? It tickles you, it makes you smile, right? But then you say it to somebody who doesn't know the words, they don't smile, say this is like, what is this? Right? So there is something that the words does in us when you read them that you need that effect. And if that effect is not delivered, you miss some of the. That's why it's very good to read in original languages. Got it? So now we're going to have, so we said that the English translations can be form or function. It cannot be both equally. So we have these ones. We have King James. I'm just going to say King James. We have NKJV. We have INV. We have RINV. We have ESV. We have GN. Good news. We have what else we have? We have the NIV. New British NIV actually. All right, so for King James, they say it's actually what do you expect it to be? More form or more function? I think this is more literal, form. Just 2 minutes, give me 2 minutes. 1 minute I will spend on this. This table for everybody, if you want to teach your kids, and you want to do it yourself, to learn to read the Bible and not to stop, just read the story. Because we said it's about, the Revelation is about a family story, right? Starts with Adam and Eve, all the way to the book of Revelation. So there's a certain narrative, a certain story. If you want to do, you can actually say narrative and auxiliary. Narrative books are the top ones. It goes from Genesis to Exodus to Numbers. What about Leviticus and Deuteronomy? They're auxiliary. If you want the first time anybody reads it to skip those, perfectly fine. Just have to go Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, and then Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Tobit, Ruth, Judges, 1st and 2nd Maccabees. You cover the story of the Old Testament. That's it. If you want to read it again, and if you got the story, you might read it again, the story. You add these books later. Then you understand where Leviticus fit. and where Deuteronomy fit, and all these books fit. This rest of the books of the Bible are non-narrative, meaning they don't carry the story. They're books to help the church. So the church was a tribe. The church was a nation in the time of Moses. They needed a book of law. Moses gave them Deuteronomy. A book of liturgical prayers, Leviticus. The prophets came to scream at kings in the story of the kings. They were not coming, this is not more stories. These are not more stories. These are actually books that added to the story. But the main story is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 books. And that's it. I would not even include Judith and Tobit in it. I would keep them with the books here. I would go from you might 14 books will cover the story. These are all additional books that you actually need to understand more. That's what we call narrative and non-narrative. If you want to do this, when somebody asks you what should I read, give them the narrative. They will follow through all the way to the end. So we said translation is interpretation. Can enhance or our understanding can change the purpose of the script between the extreme form focused and function based. We talked about this. The English translation used by the Orthodox churches in NKJV, now they are actually going to change that to make it the ESV. The NIV and NRSV are accepted on the alternative. So there's 4 ways of translating. Word for word, they call it form equivalent. Meaning for meaning, natural equivalent. We like that, like the second one. And then the functional equivalent is thought for thought. You don't have to have the meaning, just what the thought is expressing. And paraphrasing is completely straying away from the thought and the meaning. Here we have it. Can we shrink it a little bit? Okay, go up. So these are the translations, and the first group is word for word. They call it form equivalent, like literal almost, including the King James, the RSV. RSV and King James is okay, but they're on the border. We like to be here. We like to be here, exactly. Now they're more toward this. I think they have a new one that the Orthodox churches are liking, the ESV. The New King James used to be our favorite until now, from the Catholic Church. And the NRSV is closer to it. The God Word is another one. The New, I forgot what is that, New Jerusalem Bible. There's the NIV, New International Version. Oh, the one that we really don't like at all, and we have nothing to do with it. The good, where is it? There's
NIV?
NIRV, the MSG and the GMT. Go up and we can see, go down. The keys to this, that's it?
No, I
Oh, there we go.
Here we
have
go. So there's a Christian Standard Bible, the ESV English Standard Version now becoming very favorable. And I heard this from the Orthodox priests. They are like that. They like that a lot. The GNT Good News Translation. That's what it is. What we have in Egypt is called the Green Book.
Yeah, كتاب الحياة.
no, it's not.
Oh, كتاب الحياة.
Right?
Yeah, كتاب الحياة. That's it. We think of it as a hoax because it doesn't have anything related to anything. So the ones that we like are in this group here. But between the RSV, the KJV, actually ASV2, ESV, and KJV, and NRSV. Those are the ones that we like.
What's bad about the thought for thought? What's bad about that?
Because they assume that they know how to translate the thought. First of all, it assumes a lot, it presumes a lot on the translator. That he got the thought, he got it right, and he's translating it right. We cannot assume that, right? You're gonna have to have, he doesn't leave you a place for you to really understand otherwise.
So, okay, thank you, Buna. But when it comes to meaning for meaning, that means we have to know the thought to have the meaning. So how did we even get the meaning?
They will just look at the words, their words, and see what are the meaning behind. Again, it's restrictive. It's better than having the origin of the meaning.
I think meaning is a statement by statement. Thought is like you take a paragraph.
The subject.
Yeah,
Yes.
the whole
It's
subject.
almost like
And meaning is a statement by statement. You take the statement
Yeah.
and you just get the
Meaning
cut my
of each
bread.
sentence, each statement.
Yeah.
All right? Okay.
Don't cut my bread.
Let's say our Father. Make us worthy, Lord, to say thank you. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread.
Forgive us
Our
our
trespasses,
trespasses,
as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation.
deliver us from evil. In Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen. May the love of God the Father and grace of the only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you and with peace. Peace be with you.